Good evening. This is Harold Watson, Chair of the Stratford Zoning Commission that now sits for a special public hearing and administrative meeting on Wednesday, July 10th, 2024 at 6 p.m. The quorum for this meeting is 4, and I will now call on the following elected commissioners. Zone 1 Commissioner Linda Manos. Zone 2 Commissioner Ewald Joseph. Zone 3 Commissioner, myself, Harold Watson, here. Zone 4 Commissioner Deborah Lamberti. Zone 5 Commissioner Lynn Petricelli.
Here.
We also have sitting with us this evening Rich Fredette, our alternate. We also welcome Jay Habansky, our Planning and Zoning Administrator, Gail DeCilio, our Recording Secretary, Patricia Sullivan, our Zoning Legal Counsel. The public may speak only at the invitation of the Chair during both administrative and public hearings. With that said, I call to order this monthly session of the Stratford Zoning Commission at 6 p.m. All in favor? Aye. We will now move to the public hearing portion. Will someone make a motion to open the public hearing? We don't need to? Okay. So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Now, we have to read, should we read 3 and 3?
You can read all 6 of them if you wouldn't mind, because I'm going to make one
Read all
presentation
6?
regarding
Okay.
all 6 applications. Thank you.
Deborah, are you taking on this, reading the whole thing, or do we want to
Sure,
split it up?
I can read.
Okay.
550 Main Street, map 5524, petition of Point Stratford Renewal LLC seeking a coastal site plan review for the stockpiling and placement of fill regarding remediation activities and to elevate the site for redevelopment. 2, 550 Main Street, map 50/5/2/4, petition of Point Stratford Renewal LLC seeking an erosion and sediment controls review for the stockpiling and placement of fill regarding remediation activities and to elevate the site for redevelopment. Number 3, 550 Main Street, map 50/5/2/4, petition of Point Stratford Renewal LLC seeking an erosion and sediment controls review for the demolition and remediation activities and related site work. 4, 550 Main Street, map 50/5/1/3, petition of Point Stratford Renewal LLC seeking a coastal site plan review for the stockpiling and placement of fill regarding remediation activities and to elevate the site for redevelopment. 5, 550 Main Street, map 50/5/1/3, petition of Point Stratford Renewal LLC seeking an erosion and sediment control review for the stockpiling and replacement of fill regarding remediation activities and to elevate the site for redevelopment. And finally, 6, 550 Main Street, map 50/5/1/3, petition of Point Stratford Renewal LLC seeking an erosion and sediment controls review for the demolition, remediation activities, and related site work.
Good evening, ladies, Mr. Chairman.
And gentlemen.
Well, I'll get to them after I have my own way. I got ladies first, then the chairman, then the commissioners, then the town attorney, then Jay, then Lenny. Anyway, good evening, ladies, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Ms. Sullivan, Jay, my name is Barry Knott. I'm a lawyer with the firm of Knott, and Adams with offices at 1656 Main Street, Stratford. I'm here this evening on behalf of Point Stratford LLC of 550 Main Street, Stratford, Connecticut. With me is Mr. James Carrera, sitting in with the gray, who is co-manager of Point Stratford, Ted Lane in the front row, co-manager, and Peter Carrera, who was Director of Real Estate Acquisition and Development. Also with me is John Mancini, who's in the back. He is a a civil engineer and senior principal of BL Companies, a large engineering company of Meriden, Connecticut. Kurt Procherina and David Firrick, to my right. They are our environmental professionals. Dave is president of Lorero Engineering, Plainville, Connecticut, which is the site LEP approved by DEEP and which has prepared the applications before you tonight, all of whom will be available to discuss the technical aspects of our proposal and be available to answer questions. Now, tonight's hearing resulted from my client submitting a number of applications, which Deb just read off, 6 in total. A CAM application for the stockpiling and placement of fill regarding remediation activities that have to occur here and to elevate the site, which I'll get into in a minute, for development. An application for erosion and sediment control for the same activity, and an application for erosion and sediment control for demolition and remediation activities and related site work. 3 of these applications were filed regarding the factory building, formerly known as AVCO or United Allied Signal, which includes approximately 27 buildings containing 1.5 million square feet of space located on approximately 52 acres on Main Street to the north of Sniffen's Lane. The other 3 applications were submitted for an approximate 20-acre parcel to the south of Sniffen's Lane on the corner of Main Street and Sniffen's Lane. The average site elevation of all of these properties is 7 feet above mean high water, while the required FEMA elevation is 14 feet. Therefore, the elevation on both sites have to be raised by approximately 7 feet in order to comply with the FEMA flood regulations. The site also contains significant contamination which must be remediated to state and federal standards during the development process. The applications before you tonight are the first steps in this remediation project. Specifically included in the remediation process is the abatement of state and federally regulated building materials such as asbestos and PCBs, the decommissioning, demolition, and recycling of the existing buildings, the connection of a new fire suppression system for the airport, significant stormwater management engineering, as well as construction of a soil cap in accordance with the approved closure plan. When I say approved, it's approved by Army Corps, EPA, and DEEP. Closure plan, remediation, flood mitigation, and coastal resiliency requirements of those 3 agencies. At this point, there is no information available as to the ultimate use of this property after the proposed demolition and remediation has been completed. The reason for this is there is an anticipated 36-month time frame for the demolition and environmental remediation of the property to deep Army Corps and EPA standards as contained in the already approved remedial action plan. However, this demolition, remediation, and regrading of the site must be done now, no matter what the ultimate use of the property is. Future meetings with all town agencies, including you, will be held regarding the future development of this site once the remediation project is underway. Now, we've all been here for a long time. We know about this property. But I want to give you a brief history of the site. On March 1st, 1995, the front page of the Hartford Courant contained an article to the effect that the Pentagon announced plans to shutter the underused Allied Signal tank engine plant in Stratford. That was 29 years ago. Bill Clinton was President of the United States. Forrest Gump won the Oscar for Best Picture. Windows 95 was the latest software available for the so-called personal computer, which was making its advent into American homes and offices. 1995, personal computers was coming onto the scene. This was over 10,700 days ago. Over the years, there have been many starts and stops to the potential development of this property. However, in October of 2013, my client these gentlemen, were selected by the Army as developer of the property. This was 3,800 days ago. Once selected, my client initiated discussions with the Army Corps, DEP, and EPA, among other agencies, regarding on-site contamination, FEMA elevation issues, and the details of site remediation. I have handed each of you 2 documents, one of which is a plain white piece of paper, which sets forth a list of 5 DEP permits we've already received regarding the solid waste closure plan, the cleanup and remediation plan, as well as the stewardship permit, all of which provide for the site-wide environmental investigation and cleanup of the property, a long-term stewardship activities, financial assurances, and post-remediation groundwater monitoring, among other things. I've highlighted these approvals in yellow. The other document is the cross-section exhibit showing the existing elevation of the property as it sits now and the proposed elevation of the property after FEMA compliance. Kurt will get into that second document during his presentation. I became involved representing Point Stratford in June of 2021 in order to coordinate the potential remediation and development of the site with the town administration and local permitting agencies. These efforts resulted in numerous meetings with the town administration and various town department heads, including engineering, health, conservation, building, public works, police, and fire, in order to determine issues of concern to all of the town administrators regarding the smooth and proper development of this property. We started out being completely transparent with the town and all the agencies. That was our MO going forward. It's always been my MO with respect to any applications that I presented, because I learned a lot a long time ago. There are no secrets, and you might as well tell everybody what's going on as soon as you possibly can. In the meantime, Transactional and Environmental Counsel, civil engineers, licensed environmental professionals were working to finalize the closing details, environmental and development details with the Army Corps, EPA, and DEP. All of these efforts resulted in my client taking title to the property from the Army on April 2nd, 2024, 29 years and 33 days after the announcement of the plant closure by the Pentagon. 29 years and 33 days. As a result of these submittals to you tonight, local zoning regulations and state law requires referral of the CAM application to both Long Island Sound Office of the DEP and the Stratford Waterfront and Harbor Management Commission for their advice and consent. We appeared before the Waterfront Commission on Monday of this week and received unanimous approval of our proposed development concept from the Waterfront Commission at its meeting day before yesterday. Jay has a copy of their approval letter in his file, as do I. Both the Stratford Harbor Management Plan and state statutes address the concept of a proposed waterfront development project. This is a waterfront development project, obviously, okay, within the definitions of those regulations and state statutes. In order to qualify as a water-dependent use under those regulations and state statutes, the property must include uses providing general public access to marine and tidal waters, as well as protection of scenic quality regarding, in this case, the Housatonic River, as well as pursuing opportunities for stimulating economic growth. During the many meetings I have had with the town administration and department heads, we have reached agreement with the town that there will be some sort of linear public park and public viewing walkway on the river side of our proposed development, the details of which are to be worked out with the town once the ultimate use of this property is determined after the environmental remediation and FEMA compliance have occurred. Both the town and my client are fully committed to this linear park concept on the water side of this property. At this point, I would like to introduce Mr. Kurt Procherena, who will take you through the details of the CAM, erosion and sediment control applications. Dave Furick and John Mancini, as well as representatives of my client, are also available to answer questions regarding these proposals. Kurt?
Kurt, could you spell your last name for our secretary?
I'll actually give you a card to make it easier.
That is easier. Thank you.
Can everybody see that okay?
Pull it back.
For the record, Kurt Bocherena, licensed professional engineer with Lorero Engineering Associates, 100 Northwest Drive, Plainville, Connecticut. Good evening, everyone. As Barry indicated, I'm going to give an overview of the project. I'm going to try to be thorough but succinct. And of course, if there's any questions, if there's anything I leave out, that's what we're here for tonight. So a quick background of the site, just to orient. North is to the upper left-hand corner. Oh, sure, okay, all right. How's that? North is at the upper left-hand corner of the map. And as Barry indicated, we're talking about two parcels, but I'm going to talk about this site in a collective manner. The south parcel, south of Sniffens Lane, and the main parcel, north of Sniffens Lane. Essentially, the procedures and the steps that I'm going to talk about are going to be applicable for both parcels. So that's why we're talking about it in a collective manner. To orient us, Main Street on the west side, undeveloped property, of course, the Housatonic River over to the east, and undeveloped property in the back. In total, about 72 acres of the project. We're in the MA zone. Sure. And as Barry indicated, two activities taking place. Demolition of the buildings, I like to call it decommissioning and dismantling or deconstruction, and then remediation and placement of a soil cap on the site, which will serve to both remediate the site and to provide coastal resiliency to raise it above that flood elevation. And as Barry indicated, about 7 plus or minus feet of fill. I'm a little over 6 feet tall, so not much taller than me for the fill that's coming into the site. To recap, because there's a lot of permits, what Barry said, this is a list of the permits that have been secured so far for the project. Over 3 years, the team has worked to secure these permits. State of Connecticut, mainly deep permits. We are now down here at the town of Stratford before you, kind of approaching the end of the permitting road for the project, which is pretty exciting. So we've got the erosion sediment controls specific to demolition, erosion sedimentation controls, and coastal site plan for the capping operation. One permit will remain if we receive approvals, and that is another state of Connecticut permit called the general permit for the discharge of stormwater, wastewater from construction activity, the stormwater general permit, as most people call it. I make that a note because the erosion sedimentation control plans that were submitted as part of the application that will be approved need to work in concert with the same sets of plans that go into that permit. Those documents, even though we have a set of town plans and a set of state plans, they of course have to work in sync. In addition, that permit requires us to prepare what's called a stormwater pollution control plan that dictates various procedural things, including on-site inspections before the work starts, periodic inspections during the construction. So all of these plans work in concert. So that's the permits. Now I'll talk a little bit about the process and project-specific activities, kind of a basic list of the evolution of the work on the site once all the permits are in place. You can see permits secured, our first activity. In addition to the land use permits, the state permits, and that general permit, there's a demolition permit pending before the town, and other notifications and things like that that will be put into place before the work starts. Many of those are in place now, some will follow. Once all of those permits are secured, the mobilization phase, which is really all of our temporary site controls and facilities, will begin. That's when personnel, temporary job site trailers, signage, those kinds of things will get mobilized to the site, and that's really when the project starts. There's some pretty specific things that'll get geared up at that point. We have a vector control program. There's an existing vector control program at the site that's been going on for many years, which is wonderful. Many of the sites that we deal with have been abandoned. This site is not. The contractor will implement that program before new work starts. There's a site security plan that will get implemented, which has been approved by DEEP, and it's in some of the documents that I showed you. There's an air monitoring system that'll be deployed, and Dave can answer any questions you might have on that. So that's all part of the mobilization phase, really before any of the work starts. Once we've mobilized, the next step will be abatement of the regulated materials in the buildings. Pretty typical pre-demolition type work, and that's some of the old building materials, asbestos and the like, that will be abated inside the building. Licensed contractors, there's various federal notifications they need to make. The contractor for that work is on board now, North Star Demolition. They're the largest demolition contractor in the country, extremely capable, extremely competent, and familiar with facilities of this size, which is why the team went with them. Once the abatement is completed, those materials are disposed of off-site in accordance with the regulations into licensed disposal facilities. We deploy the erosion sedimentation control plans. And those are really the plans that are part of our applications to the town, coupled with the general permit that I talked about and that stormwater pollution control plan. So just to touch a little bit on how those were developed, really there's three main guidance documents that we use to develop those plans. State of Connecticut, Guidelines for Soil Erosion Sedimentation Control, was updated recently. It's a very large book, and really every project in the state of Connecticut uses that as a reference point. It's what the DEP uses as their reference point. The erosion sedimentation controls of the town of Stratford, great detailed checklist that our plans were prepared in accordance with. And that general permit. It also has some guidance in there that ties into the plans and that stormwater pollution control plan. So those are really the three regulatory documents that are used to develop our erosion sedimentation control plans.
May I ask a question on this?
Absolutely.
Our town engineer, John Casey, is very much on top of this, but I just see a memo that he sent to us on the 8th. So it's recent, and it looks like it supersedes a lot of the memos that we saw weeks ago from this. Are you working with him in this instance?
Yes, we actually have that memorandum. I've reviewed all of the comments in there. I've actually reached out to John to set up a meeting to review these. Based on my review of his comments, I see no issues with satisfying Mr. Casey as to his comments relative to the erosion sedimentation control plans.
Okay, so the issues he raises of our pumps, we have a pump station there, we've been controlling as much as we can our stormwater flow through pipes in there, and you're aware of all of that?
Yes, and we can absolutely address all his comments relative to that.
Okay.
Yep, those discussions have taken place, and we can definitely add additional detail.
So if we just include his letter as a
Sure.
as a statement, you would
Absolutely.
not have any problem with that?
Yep,
Okay.
correct.
One other question. Sorry, my mind just went blank. Keep going. It'll come to me.
Interrupt me, absolutely, no problem. When we look at soil erosion and sediment control, we really look at three things, and it's pertinent to this site. We look at, first of all, preventing erosion. So we want to prevent erosion before it even happens. That way we don't have to deal with the second half of the statement, sedimentation.
That is, now it comes back to me.
Okay.
You are doing a project simultaneously as the mud flat cleanup, correct?
At this time, the cleanup of the mud flats is not contemplated in our application. And the folks
But it
from,
will be happening, it's my understanding.
I'll defer to others on that one. Barry?
I'm glad you raised that question, Harold, because it's confusing. The cleanup, originally, the mud flats were going to be dredged so that a marina could go there, okay? The federal government, at the beginning of the Biden administration, had the money to do that. It was something like $60 or $80 million to dredge out that mud flap. Unfortunately, the feds canceled the allocation of that money to cleanup of the mudflats, so that the position of the DEP right now is there will be no marina there until pigs fly. However, the excavation of contaminated material in the mudflaps is going to happen, but not to the extent where a marina can be created,
Well, it was-
just to clean out.
Originally, it was going to be 18 feet down. They were
Yeah,
gonna pull
right.
out
So
that
it's
much
now
soil
we're
and
talking about
build it
the
back
top,
up. Okay.
which is going to cost some tens of millions of dollars. The Army has committed to do that. They have the money to do that. Maybe they'll have the money to do the whole thing. We don't know that yet. But as I've already articulated, getting the Army to make decisions and move on things takes a long time. We are not waiting to develop this property for the Army to make a decision regarding the cleaning of the mudflaps. It's their responsibility. Originally, they were going to take the material from the mudflaps and dump it on our site, which would have been great because we got to raise the elevation of this site. Unfortunately, they can't give us a time frame within which they're in a position to do that. So we're going forward with our development now. And if it turns out that the Army can provide our site with some of the fill from the mudflats, that's great. If it turns out they can't, then they have to ship that material someplace else. So that's the story with the mudflats.
I'm just interested in making sure that both projects are not conflicting with each other.
No, no, not at all. It's not at all.
I wanted, we need both done.
Yeah, exactly.
But I want to make sure that they're,
You
we're
know,
not.
I'm thinking that by the time the Army gets around to deciding what it wants to do, that money will then
I'll
be
be
available.
waving.
It'll be available from the Defense Department to do the thing right. Because Stratford has been penalized by this whole ridiculous scenario for the last 30 years. And the least we could get out of it would be a marina. But DEP is saying right now that that's not the case.
I would be happy with shellfish beds that were edible.
Well, that's
If
the
we could end
story.
up with that, we would be in great shape. Question?
When I was at the Baldwin Center, a short time ago, we were told that someone from the Army still sat and advised. Is that not true?
Yeah, please, yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Jim Cabrera. I'm the co-managing partner at PSR, and yeah, you probably heard me speak at that event. There's a person on site. He works for a company called Agenta, and they have a contract with the U.S. Government to provide caretaker services on the property currently. And we have a project going on right now, which is part of it's called an ESCA, to clean up the PCB in the site. And so he's representing the Army on site to do that, and he has his full staff of people there as well.
So the first thing is to prevent erosion, and I'll touch upon that, why it's important. The second is to control sediment. A lot of our plans talk about silt fence and those kinds of things. So if there is some erosion, we want to make sure that that sediment doesn't impact any receptors, for example, the stormwater system. So we want to protect that stormwater system while it's still there. The stormwater system will sequentially be removed as the cap is put in place, but it will be replaced with other facilities. So there'll never be a time where we rip out the stormwater system and then get to it later. It's going to be done in a very controlled, very methodical manner. And then the last piece is really managing stormwater, both stormwater just from general site activities to the existing stormwater and those stormwater systems, as I mentioned.
So in John's note where he talks about you have an exit onto Main Street across from Access Road on the elevated property, his concern was that excess water on top of that elevated land is going to come down that roadway.
Yep, and we will control that water as the site is built up.
So you're doing both interim and permanent?
Absolutely,
solutions.
yes.
Okay.
And by the way, additional descriptions of those things, interim and permanent, are defined in the Stormwater Pollution Control Plan, because that plan has to get submitted to DEEP for their approval.
And that's
So
a
it
separate
addresses both.
approval that they'll give you
That's correct. That
prior,
was,
this is before your site is even finished.
yeah, that's right. We can't start our active site disruptions until we have that permit in place. And one requirement for us submitting that permit to DEEP for approval is local approval. And that's because DEEP doesn't want to get ahead of things. They want to wait till the local approval's in place. There's actually a piece of paper we have to put in our submittal to them that says, we've received our local approvals, now you can review our plan, please approve our plan. So once all those erosion sedimentation control measures are in place, they'll be inspected by a professional engineer. That's a requirement of the DEEP permit. Work will begin on active demolition. And as I mentioned earlier, I like to call that decommissioning. That includes utility terminations. As you might imagine, we're going to cut off electricity, sewers, those kinds of things. There are some existing utility relocations that must take place because this site serves other things. For example, the hangars across the street, that work is currently underway. We're very well aware of that, very much on top of that. The building demolition, again, North Star Demolition, very large, capable demolition company. They're going to decommission and dismantle the buildings, and I use those terms because modern demolition has changed a lot. Even in the past 10 years, modern equipment, it's not like it used to be where we knocked buildings down. It's a very methodical, almost a surgical process, and one of the reasons for that is we want to be very diligent about controlling dust, stormwater. Also, recycling has become a huge part of the demolition process. And if they just went in there and ripped the buildings down, they wouldn't be able to efficiently recycle the materials, metals and those kinds of things, because from a demolition contractor standpoint, that has value. So they actually put together their own plan of attack, and then they work through the demolition. Much of the work really won't be visible to the public the way that it's happening because of the equipment that's being used. It's almost surprising. Some people will say, I didn't even realize there was work taking place in there, and 75% of the building's gone. Very, very capable contractor on board. Those materials will generally be hauled off site. Some materials will remain on the site, and Dave can talk about the what and the why of that. Again, we have some materials that'll leave the site that'll go to recycling facilities off site, steel. Some materials will get disposed of, but they really try to minimize that. They don't want to have to pay to get rid of material. Another important thing, and I know mentioned with preventing erosion, the demolition will take place leaving the building slabs and the pavement in place for as long as possible. It's very beneficial to have those on the site. We can control stormwater, we can control dust, so that's been thought about, and the demolition sequence that they're going to employ will leave those things kind of to the last minute. When the filling operation starts, that I'll come back to, that's when those things will get broken up for drainage and such. But we definitely want to maintain as much of that ground cover that's at the site now during that demolition process.
Am I right in assuming that that pavement is going to get crushed and become one of the sublayers on the fill?
That is, in general terms, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So once the demolition work is complete, and again, that's where the erosion sedimentation control for the first set of permits comes into play, we move on to placement of the soil cap. And as I mentioned before, and as Barry mentioned, the soil cap is required for remediation and to raise the site above the floodplain, about 7 feet, as I mentioned, a little taller than I am. So a couple of things about the soil cap. It's a very, very well planned out process. The company that's been brought on board is Clean Earth. They're one of the largest, if not the largest, fill supplier in the country. Very sophisticated organization. The importation of the fill material is really more like bringing in a product as it is them putting out a sign saying, fill wanted, like we've all seen in our neighborhoods or in our towns. What they do is they have a very sophisticated system where they source fill suppliers. It's carefully planned. The fill material has to meet a very stringent set of requirements that Dave can talk about from an environmental standpoint. It also has to work from a geotechnical standpoint Because we're bringing in this material not only to be a cap, but potentially to have a future development on it, it has to be good, firm, stable soil when it's placed and when the cap is in place. So they have a very, very detailed process that they use to source that material. Once they've sourced a supplier, and there'll be multiple suppliers from different areas, they schedule those deliveries. So right now that material will come in by truck, and all of that material is carefully detailed in the deep approved plans that we have, even the truck routing coming into the site. It's a very methodical process. There will be some stockpiling of soils on the site, but the intent is to try to minimize as best we can the amount of time material stays in a stockpile. We want it to be more of a dynamic process. Trucks come in, they deposit the soil. Some of the soil may get blended with other soils to enhance its physical properties, again, so it makes a nice, firm, stable fill. But the intent is to move as quickly as possible. Again, time is money, so the quicker that soils can be delivered and placed on the site, the better. Soils will be placed in what we call lifts, and those are really just layers about 18 inches thick. Each layer is compacted to make sure that it's dense. Once a layer is complete, packed in, the next layer can be put on, and that cap slowly builds up in a sequential manner. During that process, we're monitoring all the erosion sedimentation controls, making sure that dust mitigation measures, and as I mentioned, we have an air monitoring plan that Dave can talk about to measure potential dust in the air to make sure that we're complying. I have a diagram here that hopefully you can see it, that talks about some of the fill, and I thought it was important to highlight it. Everyone's familiar with the berm or the dike at the edge of the site. All of our fill material will be placed on the landward side of the levee, the dike. No work will take place on the waterward side. Very, very important to note.
So the current 10 feet or whatever that dike is, or it's 8, it's not 14 feet. or
Yep,
it's
we'll
not
be
t-
working behind it on the landward
So
side.
that your elevation height will not be at the dike, it'll be at the
Below it.
wall. It'll be
That's
back
correct.
from there.
Yep, a little tough to see, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, because we're only going
I have a
7+
question.
feet.
In both the harbor, in both the waterfront and harbor management documents and the deep, they both are concerned about the process of remediation and the process of fill. How do they protect the existing wetlands? Granted, this was all wetlands at one time, but it will never be again unless we end up with massive global warming. But how can you protect, what are you doing to protect the existing wetlands that still exist within that area? I guess that would include the shoreline, but also the area in the property to the right facing, standing on Main Street.
The wetlands on this site are tidal wetlands. There are no inland wetlands on this site or within 100 feet of this site. So we don't have to deal with the Inland Wetlands Commission, which is typically a concern on a project of
But
this
there were
size.
comments that one of the storage tanks or one of the storage areas actually impedes, is going into those wetlands.
Kurt will address that. What
Okay.
he's talking about is there
I-
was
Listen,
a comment
it's early in the project. I just want to know,
development of our south parking lot encroaches into outflow 8. That was one of the comments.
John, do you want to address that?
it's a problem that I think that could be solved by simply
Well,
moving it
it's
slightly.
already has been solved, or it will be solved, because that's one of the issues that was raised by John Casey in one of his memoranda, and Kurt has already indicated to you that we will comply with all of John Casey's comments, and he's trying to set up a meeting in order to do that. So I don't think it's going to be an issue, but I don't know enough about it to talk about it.
That affects the functionality of that whole body of water.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, John Mancini, Senior Principal with BL Companies. The area that is referred to, that you're envisioning, is the lowlands that are on the south of Sippen Road, where the outfall, they call it outfall 8 is, okay? That was just cleaned up by the Army,
Yes.
that area. So the area there is also in the flight path of the airport. So the grades in that area, there's a very sophisticated formula of how little they can change through that area. So the site filling will not be happening in that area. The site filling will be north of that area because you can't change the grades. So for every feet off of this meridian line, you can go up X number of inches away so that that path can be maintained.
That makes
So-
sense because there was talk of expanding the airport, moving one of the air runways, and it would have gone right over our dump.
Right.
Our dump, which no one was
Couldn't,
willing
couldn't happen.
to pay to get rid of.
Yeah, yeah. So all I'm saying is that's an area of the site where because of that other constraint, we're not really filling
Are
that
you
area.
ruled by DEEP and our waterfront commission? Eventually, are they gonna come to you and say, I assume, reading the waterfront, they assume that they are continued in terms of the approval process, it's not a one and done. They will continue as you develop your plans further.
Yeah, yeah. This is just the remedial, yeah.
Every time we submit an application to this commission, we're going to end up before the Waterfront and Harbor Management Commission, and there are going to be numerous submittals to this, once we know what we're going to do with the property. So they're going to get their hands on it again, so are you.
Sorry.
No worries at all. So the last piece that I just wanted to point out, so to reiterate, everything occurs landward side of the dike. On the roadway side, a little hard to see, but we put a little person in a car there so you can have a little bit of a sense of scale of that fill material. But again, it's only 7 feet. We're not creating a mountain. It's very subtle. Those slopes will be stabilized. The fill material will be stabilized, as I mentioned, in a sequential manner as the fill is brought in. As each area is brought up to its targeted grade, it'll be stabilized. Then we continue to move on in a very sequential manner till the whole thing is fully stabilized, and that's required as part of that general permit again. With that, we're happy to take any questions. Barry? And I'll leave this up here.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Dave, can you discuss quality control of the material coming onto the site and the logistics of same? This is Dave Firek, our LEP, president of Lorero Engineering.
Could you spell your name for our recording secretary, please?
Can't find my card at the moment, but it's F like in Frank, I-E-R-E-C-K. Okay, so regarding the fill import process, so first of all, we have a state approval through the DEP, and that's a closure plan, and that permits the import of material, the fill material, into the site. So there is as Barry mentioned, a pretty rigorous process to screen the material. So Clean Earth, who will be the fill provider, is out looking for sources, and whether it's looking for dredging projects or recycling facilities or other places where the fill come to exist that some customer needs to get rid of. They'll be required to fill out what's called a material record log, and that log will ask a series of information, including if the material is contaminated with some industrial pollutants, and if so, to what degree. They have to go through a stringent sampling requirement to getting laboratory analytical results, and all of that becomes part of the package that is sent to in this case, Lorero Engineering, so us as the licensed environmental professional. So we're not affiliated with Clean Earth. We're a third party that's reviewing and screening this material before it can come in. So the material, not only does it require laboratory analyses, but it requires a certification from a licensed professional, whether it's a professional engineer or a LEP in the case of the state of Connecticut, or an equivalent in a surrounding state. Needs to certify with their license that it's acceptable to bring in and meets the requirements that we're bound by the state of Connecticut. It also requires a generator, so whoever the source of the material is, they need to sign off it as well. So we go through and review and make sure that it's compliant with requirements, the state requirements, and then at that point, and only at that point, is the material permitted to come into the facility. When it comes into the facility, it will be weighed, and there'll be a visual inspection too. If something looks off from a visual standpoint, that will be flagged and have to be placed in a separate stockpile. And in those cases, the location or the source where it came from will have a certain amount of days, I don't remember off the top of my head, to basically come get the material. So that material would essentially be rejected.
Maybe you can answer this, maybe that the soil, the current conditions are highly polluted. It's my understanding.
Yes.
There's a lot of soil that other people would not want to take from us.
Correct.
What you're putting in, I assume, there's less attention paid to the lowest level of the fill. That as you go up, you're going to have cleaner and cleaner fill. I assume. I'm just.
Generally speaking, yes. And there is some material on the site currently that will require removal. So there's some oily stained areas, et cetera. So before that area is even filled, that material will be addressed and removed off the site prior to the fill being placed.
I want to address Jay's administrative comments. We're good with most of them. Some of them we cannot comply with. For instance, the piles.
Well, wait 1 sec. Let me find it. Here it is. Okay. Sorry, Barry. It's the 20th. Yeah. Yeah. I just wrote all over it, yeah.
It's on the.
Sorry.
It's on the third.
It's June 20th,
Yeah,
planning staff review.
page 3. There's conditions of approval. Number 3. We cannot do anything other than 30-foot high stockpiling of material, because this site is constantly being worked. As material comes in, it's dropped off, it's spread around the site, and this is going to be a very active site. The site will be receiving multiple trucks per day, and we cannot stop the inflow of trucks while we are manipulating the height of the piles to comply with a 12-foot maximum height limit. These will be active piles within a very active development site. So that's number 1. Number 2, if a pile should be left for over 30 days, it will be hydroseeded, not 14 days. We can hydroseed after 30 days, by the way, which is the state of Connecticut DEP maximum, recommended height
Well,
max.
Barry, what does the DEP say about the 12 feet, 16 feet, the height?
I don't believe they.
What do they
don't-
say in their
They
regulation?
don't have any regulations
Okay.
regarding the height. They
Okay.
do have a regulation regarding the number of days before you have to hydroseed, and that's 30 days. 14 days does not work because most, if not all of the stockpiles will be worked constantly and be distributed around the site within a relatively short time. Number 3, we cannot provide a 60-foot setback from the property line for the location of the stockpiled material especially on the south lot, which is on the south side of Sniffen's Lane. And the reason for that is because the south end of that big parking lot on the corner of Sniffen's and Main Street that heads down towards that area where either Dave or Kurt was talking
Air
about,
Museum
where
used to be.
outflow 8 is,
Yeah.
the area that the feds just got through cleaning up. At high tide, that area encroaches into our parking lot. The water encroaches into our parking lot at high tide, especially at a perigee tide, okay? And we cannot allow that water to get anywhere near our piles. Therefore, we're going to be stockpiling the material on that parcel closer to the Sniffen's Lane side rather than in the middle of the parcel, because if we stockpile in the middle of the parcel, we would be at risk of having our piles impacted by a rising tide. We cannot have...
Mr. Knott, what about a 60-foot setback from Main Street?
I'll get to that. This south parcel, by the way, requires minimal demolition and remediation and will be the first of the 2 parcels to be redeveloped. The whole redevelopment of this particular site, we're talking approximately 6 months. That's not true of the main site, but on this particular site, we're talking about 6 months for demolition of the building. There are buildings in the back of that parking lot. And remediation and raising elevation to FEMA standards. The main parcel, the way they're going to demolition the building is they're going to start in the rear of the building and on the Sniffen's Lane side of the building and work towards Main Street and towards the north as far as the demolition is concerned. The facade of the buildings facing Main Street will be the last part of that building to be demolished. And those facades will act as a buffer, keeping the activity which is going on behind those facades from being visible to the public for the most part. We can agree to a 30-foot setback regarding the stockpiling of materials, but not 60. My client will keep the existing fences, some 6 foot, some 8 foot, around all of the property and put fence screening on all of these fences, similar to the fence screening, excuse me, that the town is using on its property immediately to the north of our north parking lot. This is the place where the town stores Evans Tree Service trucks. There's other vehicles in there. I think sometimes there are school buses in there, but I went in that parking lot today. There wasn't a lot going on in there. But it's got screening, black screening across the front, and we will use the same type of screening that the town uses at that particular location. Now, we've got horizontal cost, which is what we're talking about tonight. And then we've got vertical costs once we figure out what the use of the property is going to be. So there's 2 basic costs. Horizontal to do with what we're talking about, demolition, remediation, raising to FEMA standards. That's horizontal cost. The horizontal cost of what we're asking for tonight is $45 million. That's how much it's going to cost these guys to do this remediation to EPA, Army Corps, and DEEP standards. $45 million. Secondly, my client is responsible for property taxes now on this property. For the first time, the town of Stratford is going to receive property taxes on this facility since before World War II. When it was owned by the Army did not have to pay property taxes because the Army's the Army, okay? Now, we do, okay? So since before World War II, there's now going to be property taxes. This is a huge project. It has taken far too long for the huge bureaucracies which have heretofore controlled the disposition and development of this property to get to the place where we can finally now move forward with the redevelopment of this major Stratford asset. This is the first step in that process, and I would appreciate your favorable consideration at tonight's meeting. Time is money in developments like this, and in this case, time is huge money because of the amount of money that's involved here. Thank you.
Any comments from anybody?
Mr. Chairman, just a couple clarifications of
Sure.
my staff comments and responses from Mr. Knott. So, in preliminary meetings with you and the team, you know, I recall that piles would not exceed 10 to 12 feet. And so that's why, yes, that's what was said. That's what I have in my notes. It was 10 to 12 feet.
It
And
doesn't-
so that's why, that number wasn't just plucked out of the air. I took that from the notes that we had from your team. So, what is the anticipated height of the stockpiled fill for the stockpiled fill?
30 feet.
30 feet. Okay, so, I'm okay, I understand the 30 calendar days for any stockpiled fill, to be stabilized. So the change from 14 to 30, that makes sense to me. That's in compliance with DEEP would require that. So I'm okay with that. So you said the facade will be, the facade closest to Main Street will be acting as a buffer, but there will be stockpiling of fill in front of that. And so in front of that, the facade, I don't think, is going to be buffering the stockpiling of fill in front. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it will not be. So the concern, and I know you know the concern, but for everyone else, is this is a highly visible project, and we don't want 30-foot piles of dust that are going to be challenging to manage up on Main Street. I understand needing them closer to Sniffen's Lane, and that makes sense. And you know, when I drafted these staff comments, it was to all street lot lines, but it should have been more specific, really, to Main Street. So there's a concern that with the traffic and the high visibility of the site, anything less than 60 feet is of concern to the town, and it's not just my department, that's across multiple departments. So
Well, we can agree to 30 feet, and I'll let Jim explain the difficulties relating to the,
So again, Jim Cabrera, I'm trying to, try to get to what you're saying. So what Barry was saying, again, along Main Street, so we're going to knock this building down first. So this is where we're talking about the stockpiling. And then we're going to work our way this way on the back of the site. So again, to not have a lot of anything going on Main Street. As we take these buildings down, we'll probably end here and then come across this big building. We'll leave the front facade up so that, you know, there won't, they think that's the best way to do it, the safest way to do it, et cetera. But also, I think it's the best thing for the town so that there's less activity.
Well, that's 30 feet. The height of that facade is more than 30 feet.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So, and then whatever, distance that is, I don't know off the top of my head. So that's the one thing. And then, again, back to this site, why it has to be 30 feet is it's just kind of math. If you bring in a certain amount of fill, a certain amount of days, and we're going to be actively doing it. No one wants to put a stockpile there. If it was up to us, they'd bring the truck in, they'd drop it in place, the roller would go, and the truck would leave. So we don't want to have stockpiles, but we can't also, we have to be managing it every day, and we can't stop the trucks. So if we get a source to come in, he's going to have to come in. He's going to have to drop it in the stockpile. John actually has another plan that he could show you why it sits like right here, because it can't be close to that water like we talked about. It can be off of Main Street. We'll try to keep it as far off of Main Street if that is the concern. It has to be kind of close to Sniffen's just because of the width of the project. And that's where we'll start it. Once this building gets demoed, we're then going to have more place to put fill, and the stockpiles won't have to be as high.
I thought the plans had it almost double 60 feet from Main Street on the south parcel. So I'm not sure I understand.
Like here?
Correct.
Yeah. So, John, do you have your plan? So, John can kind of show you what we're looking to do. He's injured, but he's playing hurt.
you touched on this earlier. To be general about the setback is where the problem is, right? Because what you're talking about is that specific area on the south side. Okay. So, on this plan, yep. On this plan, north is in this direction, Sniffen is here, and Main Street is here, right? So, Jim described what is going to happen with the building coming down in the facade. So I think, you know, the building in some cases north of Sniffen is, you know, it ranges from 15 feet off the property line to 30 feet off the property line. But if that facade is being kept, that building is more than 30 feet high, especially the peak of that building. So there's really no issue with.
That I understand with the north parcel.
Right. The
Certainly.
south parcel, our property goes all the way beyond the area where Outfall 8 is. About half the width of our parcel, as you could see here, we really can't fill in this zone because of that issue. So the pile wants to go to the highest point of the site. So that is contour existing 8. You know how we talked about elevation 7? This actually rises to 8. But just to be clear to what Jim is saying, the existing buildings don't start till here. So the pile is in this area. We could live with 60 feet off of Main Street in this zone on the south side of Sniffen. We can't live with 60 feet off of Sniffen because we got to get our pile into this area.
And that's exactly what I'm suggesting, is
Right.
that I should have been
Right.
more clear in my recommendation that it's
Right.
60 feet off Main Street for the south parcel.
That's it. And this
And-
is the illustration that shows.
And given the
Right.
sequencing of the deconstruction or decommissioning,
Yeah.
and the 30-foot, probably at its shortest, I would imagine it's even taller than 30 foot on the north lot.
Exactly.
That it could be within 30 feet of that front property
That's right.
line, given the buffer that it will have. So
Exactly.
with that explanation, that makes more
Just
sense.
for this section, yes. So 60 feet for the Main Street section that's south of Sniffen. Yep. And Jay, this is just an illustration that shows where the pile would have gone. And by the way, this pile at 30 feet high is the eventual need of cubic yards of soil that a development on this side would need. So what we also don't want to do is place material here that wants to go across the street or that has to be moved. No, we want to do it smartly. We want to have the material on hand that's needed for this side only.
One other thing that I forgot to mention in my presentation, which is of the greatest concern to me, considering my office is on Main Street, South Main Street, the route of the trucks. Get off at exit 30, Lordship Boulevard to Access Road to Main Street. No vehicles will travel on Main Street south of Access Road. There will be no vehicles going up and down Main Street in front of my office and everybody else. North of Access Road. As far as south of Access Road is concerned, the trucks are going to go down to Sniffen's, make a left on Sniffen's, and go into the lot off of Sniffen's. And when they come out, they're going to reverse the procedure. So there will not be any vehicles going on Main Street south of the south property or north of Access Road, just so you know. That's been approved already by DEEP, and the sophistication of Clean Earth, who's delivering this product, is such that they will be in a position to be able to enforce that regulation, so there's not trucks driving all over town with material blowing off the top.
Is that trucking route, it's part of the condition for the general permit
I don't know if it's
for the site, or the wrap?
Who approved that?
It is part of the landfill closure plan.
Okay.
In the document that was approved by DEEP.
Thank you. That's it for us.
Ladies, gentlemen, like to make any comments?
I don't know if you can answer this. You probably can't. You're probably gonna have to get one of
I
them.
probably can't. I probably can't answer it. I'll try though, Lenny.
The trucks are gonna be exiting when they exit onto Main Street, going towards Access Road, right?
Yes.
I'm assuming they're gonna be triaxles. You're not gonna be using wheelbarrows. You're gonna be
think that's
using
two different
triaxle dump trucks.
Triaxles?
All right.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
okay. Are there gonna be tracking pads for them coming
Oh, yeah.
out to remove the dirt off the tires so that it doesn't come on Main Street?
Yes.
Okay.
That's part of the soil and erosion control plan.
All right, what's,
that
yeah,
you're
the
approving.
state requires it.
Right.
Now,
Yeah, I could answer. I was able to answer it.
I'm shocked.
And there, it is in the documentation, there is mention of
Yeah.
making sure that we're not totally destroying
That's one of the major
access road.
components of the soil and erosion control plan.
Honestly, that's where we have to be very careful, because there's people that live near Access
yeah.
Road. So they need to do a good job.
Yes.
So then we don't have to worry about the businesses on the restaurants and stuff, because those streets aren't gonna be used hardly at all, right?
Lenny, you don't have to worry about a thing.
That's not true. I get paid to worry. I have another question. I have to ask this question because I find this totally amazing. That you guys are spending all this money to renovate this project, yet have no idea what you want to put there when it's done.
Well, let me explain that to you. First of all, we're going to end up with 75 acres of clean and developable property, 3/4 of which is going to be on the river, okay? Secondly, so 45 million for a lot of that site is not an outrageous number, for starters. Secondly, I asked the same question. Well, what are we talking about here? And the explanation that I got, and actually makes sense to me, is that it's going to take 3 years to clean this place up, all right? So let's say some user wants to rent the property from us now, okay? They call up these guys. They say, all right, we want to rent 100,000 square feet of your building. When will it be ready? Well, the answer is, I don't know when it'll be ready. It's going to take 3 years to remediate it, and then it's going to take another 1.5 to 2 years to get zoning approvals for whatever we ultimately decide to put there. So the window for actual occupancy of this property is 5 years from now. I can't tell you, nor can anybody tell you what the demand for this type of property is going to be 5 years from now. It's just not realistic.
But-
We'd like to be able to tell you, but we can't.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Currently, right now, the deed on the land says no residential, no living on this property.
That's true.
Even after remediation.
That was the Army that did that.
Right, and even after the remediation, I assume that still stands.
Correct.
So you are limited in some ways of
Yeah.
what you can actually build there.
That's done via what's called an environmental land use restriction, ELUR. It's an easement across the top of the property that restricts the use of the property. And it also restricts how far you can dig into the cap. This is very similar to the project that I did on East Main Street where the former Raybestos
Yeah.
factory was. Same thing. Now, if you look at, if you remember driving down East Main Street where the Raybestos on the site, under the viaduct, Raybestos is on the site. The Raybestos facility was probably 5-6 feet lower than the road. You look down on it a little bit, except for the main office building. If you look at it now, it's 4 or 5 feet above the road because of all the fill that was brought in there in order to remediate that property. That cost, by the way, that cost $110 million to remediate that property. And they ended up selling it for 25. So the feds took a hit on that deal. But there's a cap there similar to the cap that's going to be here. So except this is a bigger site. This is at least twice as big as the Raymark site was. But the concept is similar as far as the fill and all of the activity that's got to go on here. This is a much bigger project. But the end result is going to be similar to the Home Depot, Walmart site on East Main Street.
Linda?
I have a question on taxes. You said that the Army doesn't pay the town now, right?
No.
How will they pay the town?
How will
After?
who pay the town?
How would, I mean,
My
With the new
clients?
project, yes. Will they pay the taxes while they're taking the property
Well-
down, or?
Yes and no. Here's the deal. My clients paid $1 for this property. $1. I was there when they handed over the check and the deed, okay? Anyway, she got a picture handing over the dollar and all that stuff. The property is worth more than $1 as I stand here right now, but not much more, because we got to put $45 million into it to clean it up, which is why the Army sold it to us for $1 in the first place, okay? So there's going to be some nominal taxes paid to the town during this 36-month period while we're doing the remediation. State statutes allow an agreement to be entered into between a municipality and a property developer to abate taxes or reduce taxes for a period of time equal to the time that it takes to remediate dirty property. That's in 12-63E or something of the state statutes. And that's what's happening here. So we're going to be paying some nominal taxes during the period of remediation. Then once the site is ready to be developed, it's now worth $45 million, okay? And at that point in time, the taxes are going to go through the roof.
Deborah?
You know, like hundreds of people attended the meeting at the Baldwin Center, and we already knew that they paid $1. So that's not news. But I'm really concerned about what's really happening, what we're learning today. Because the other meeting was kind of like, oh, you know, touchy-feely, to be brutally honest. And this is not, you know, this is like not making me happy.
It's not making you happy? I mean, first of all, this is the first public hearing that this property has had since October of 2013, when my guy was designated as the developer. It's the first public hearing. There was a meeting of the Waterfront Commission Monday night, but that wasn't a public hearing. The meeting at the Baldwin Center was open to the public, but that wasn't a public hearing. This is a public hearing. It has a record. They're taking notes. The secretary is taking minutes. There's going to be a record of this. I'm here tonight. I wasn't at the Baldwin Center, okay? So tonight's presentation is being done according to the book, and we're including all of the information that we have that is available to us now. And I don't know what to tell you, Deb, other than we're trying to be candid with you and explain a very complicated and difficult project that's been in the works, as far as my clients are concerned, for 14 years.
Barry, did
11
they do
years,
a similar project somewhere?
I'm sorry?
A similar project this group has done somewhere?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You want to explain other projects?
Yeah. So again, Jim Cabrera. So yeah, we did the largest development project in the state of Connecticut. It's called Harbor Point in Stamford. We bought 80 acres from 4 different sellers, all had environmental contamination, similar to this. So, yeah, so Mr. Pitney and Mr. Bowes invented the mailing machine on the site in like 1918, factory. Then Northeast Utilities was a coal gasification plant that had coal tar, which is a very complicated substance to deal with, which is on the water. So that was called Admiral's Wharf. And then we bought Yale in Town, which was they created the tumbler lock there. And the 20 acres that we bought from them was.
I was just gonna, and how long did it take you to do the 20 acres?
Well, we did the whole site, we did the whole project together. And it took us from demolition to fill there probably 36 months.
3 years.
Right around. And it had about the same amount of square footage of buildings that had to come down. And then the last one was the Manger Electric site, where Joe Lieberman was the executor of the will from the Manger family, and that was an electric manufacturing site. So that turned out to be a 7 million square foot project. we kind of knew a little bit what we were going to build there. They needed housing in Stanford, about 10,000 units, and so it was a mixed-use project. And, you know, we did a similar project in Armonk, New York, which was middle of town, a bunch of different contaminated properties. That one was mostly from a dry cleaner, and we did a cap, and we created a new center of town for the town of Armonk. So, and, you know, we have a lot of other projects around, about $2 billion worth of projects in Connecticut alone.
Thank you, Jim.
Ewald?
Actually, I don't really have a question, but I'm trying to follow up with Lenny. I know that this construction, as you call it, is it's not just to get rid of contaminants, asbestos, and all those material that could make the area unlivable.
No, that's that's not correct, Ewald.
I say unlivable.
Unlivable.
Yes.
No, that's not correct.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Once we get through with it, that will not be the case. That's the case now.
I'm no expert in economics, but $45 million you put in there with no clear picture of what you're going to do with the areas. It's kind of puzzle to me.
Well, it's 75 acres of clean industrial property on the water. That's worth $45 million all day long.
But you have, I mean, for 3 years, you're going to do that for 3 years. $45 million going to be sitting there. You have no idea what you're going to put there when we develop the area?
It's going to be a function of what the demand is 5 years from now. I don't know what to tell you, except that the investment of $45 million makes sense from a real estate investment perspective for guys like this, okay? I couldn't do it.
It's also the
Linda-
case with
Linda probably
with brownfields in general.
Yeah.
Developing brownfields is a expensive long-term proposition,
Right,
redeveloping them.
redevelopment.
Yes, Deborah?
So I thought you said, somebody said that only 35 acres is going to be buildable?
No, no, I didn't
Even
say-
though it's 70 acres?
No,
I
no.
thought somebody said something about 35 acres.
No.
Am I,
No, I said 30, the Walmart site was 35 acres. The Walmart site.
Anybody else? Jay, do you have anything that you'd like to ask?
No, thank you.
Well, no, we now have to go to a public hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have my piece of paper. Okay, we're not going to introduce, I'm going to open this up to public comments, but we are going to take the whole, all six. Yes, that's what I'm doing, but I just want you to know, we're taking the whole project, all six things that are coming before us tonight. That being said, is there anybody here who would like to speak in opposition to the project? I'll say it again. Anybody here like to speak in opposition? No? Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor? I'll say it again. Anybody like to speak in favor of this project? Yes. Good.
Donald Petrimus, resident of Stratford. I'm in favor of the project.
Yeah.
P-U-T-R-I-M as in Mary, A-S. I'm in favor of the project because anything that helps this town helps me. Okay, we have a wasted area down there, approximately 80 acres. It's sitting there, not generating any money for this town. Doesn't look good at all, okay? It's full of pollutants, or as compared to some of the other places, not full of pollutants, but polluted. Can't use it for anything. Attracts animals, critters, and everything else that we don't want in this town. And if these people are willing to spend $45 million to make it look nice, I'm for it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else?
Michael Robinson, live on the corner of Heartland Street and Short Beach Road, it's about a half a mile away from the site. You know, 30 years is way too long for anything to happen there, so it's time to do something. I'm also a representative for the United Brotherhood of Carpenters, so I'm hoping that the developers do the right thing and put people who live in the area work on the project. Thank you.
Thank you. I've neglected to say, I have to read one thing into the record. For the record, petitions to be heard this evening were advertised in the Connecticut Post on June 26th and July 3rd, 2024. That being said,
Move to close the public portion.
don't we have to do a rebuttal? Well, we didn't, there is no rebuttal.
There's no rebuttal, there's nothing to rebut.
One more time, is there anybody who'd like to comment one way or the other? No? Would the applicant like to do a rebuttal? You done?
No, I have no further comments other than to say that while we took the application presentation as one presentation, you have to vote on each individual application separately. Thank you.
Okay.
Move to close the public portion on all
Second?
6.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, now we're going to open our administrative session. We just closed it. So, that's okay, I'm not asleep yet, I'm getting there, but not yet. We now need to go to our administrative session. Of course, I got to find my...
So, Mr. Chairman, just as everyone's kind of getting settled, that I'm happy at your direction to kind of go over, you know, we've got a lot of recommendations from different departments and agencies, and if the commission would like, I'm happy to go over them in detail or kind of generally at your direction.
I'm going to suggest that we do that. That we let Jay go through, there's a health department, there's the waterfront commission statements, and there's the planning department statements. We let Jay formulate those and then apply that same set of whatever we decide upon to each of the 6 items that we have to vote on. That's the way that we can be fairly efficient on this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you want to read them into the record? Yeah.
So, Jay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll start first with the Waterfront Harbor Management Commission's letter. You know, their comment was that their commission has no objection to the proposed work with the understanding that all upland work will be in compliance with the DEEP approved remedial action plan and coordinated with effective remediation of the tidal flats and the best management practices will be employed to ensure no significant adverse impacts on environmental quality, including water quality in the harbor management area, on air quality, on the overall quality of life in the town's shore areas. In addition, the work in progress should be subject to regular monitoring and progress reports, and the Waterfront Harbor Management Commission will have the opportunity to continue to review and monitor the work as it progresses and provide additional comments and recommendations. So I think first, we would just want to reiterate the recommendation from the Waterfront Commission that they be in compliance with the DEEP approved remedial action plan and their memo dated July 10th, 2024.
Jay, may I ask you one question?
Yes, and I'm sorry you didn't get those before. I just received this recommendation letter today at 4:30.
In the waterfront harbor, there was a mention of a remedial action plan that was possibly not complete from DEEP, I believe it was. Although
Yeah, and so, you know, I've spoken.
that did appear today.
The applicant has given testimony that the remedial action plan is in place and approved. Either way, and you know, I don't know what conversations the Waterfront Harbor Management Commission has had with the other state or federal agencies regarding this project. It's my understanding that the remedial action plan has been approved, and I think we should proceed as such. And essentially, we are conditioning what they have to do, at least for this item, what they have to do no matter what. And it's to comply with DEEP's approved remedial action plan in the waterfront memo dated July 10, 2024.
Okay.
They can't proceed without it, so.
Okay. And
the next-
that, I'm sure, is understandable to you guys.
So the next item was a 25-page recommendation letter from DEEP. I gave you the first 3 pages, which were essentially the executive summary. I tried my best to highlight what those recommendations were. There are 11, and I have those 11 identified on your handouts, and I have them identified here in the record. So I'm happy to read through each one of them. It may take a little while, but you could also just condition the coastal site plan review and the erosion and sediment control based off of the 11 recommendations identified by DEEP in their letter dated July 10, 2024.
Well, Jay, coastal site plan reviews from DEEP take precedent over us in terms of their determinations, correct?
No, so essentially, the coastal management area, any project that is proposing certain regulated activities by DEEP requires the local municipality, us, to require a coastal site plan review and have the applicant come in and explain how the proposed activity will or hopefully will not have any detrimental impacts to the coastal resources, the bluffs, you know, the tidal wetlands, the tidal flats, things like that. And so it's not about necessarily taking precedent. It's required by the municipality. This Connecticut state statutes require the municipality to hold these coastal site plan reviews, which is what we're doing. And so as part of that, we have to refer the coastal site plan review to DEEP. And then they give us recommendations and comments, which is what this lengthy recommendation letter is with the 11 recommended conditions of approval. They've been sent to the applicant, but they were sent at 4:40 today when I got them from DEEP. So you probably haven't had time to read through them. I sent them to Attorney Knott and Kurt. So you have them in your hands.
Oh, okay, forget it.
So regarding the DEEP letter, I recommend that you condition those 11 requirements, which they're going to be required to do anyways. So I don't think there's much concern there. Let me just check these off as I go. So these next 3 items are all going to be, would all be conditioned prior to any site work, demolition, or stockpiling of any fill. So first, they need to get a letter from the town engineer stating that all of their recommendations have been satisfied from his memo dated June 14th, 2024, and July 8th, 2024. The applicant already already agreed to that.
Yes.
Prior to the commencement of any work at the site, a letter from the health department that their recommendations have been satisfied. I do not have that recommendation letter for some reason in my file. Does someone have the date on that?
I'm trying to, let me look through my stuff. Here it is.
Yeah, the
here.
health department from Olivia.
July 2nd, 2024.
Thank you.
And it's basically just best management practices with dust and all of that, which I'm sure is not a surprise. You could say yes without even reading it.
And so I'm sure that is in here somewhere. I'm just having, there's a
Here
lot
it
of
is, Jay.
documents. There's a lot of documents in my folders, and I'll take it from you. Thank you,
Here it is.
Mr. Chairman. Okay.
I think. Did I hand you the right one?
Yes, you did. Thank you. That's correct.
Yes.
Prior to the commencement of any site work, demo, or stockpiling of fill, revised plans reflecting all applicable conditions of approval and recommendations from the Planning and Zoning Department, Town Engineer, Health Department, Waterfront Harbor Management Commission, and DEEP shall be incorporated into the plans. We understand there are going to be some recommendations that aren't applicable to these revised plans, but the ones that are, we want to see those revised plans on file. We have the applicant shall adhere to all recommendations and recommended conditions of approval from the Planning and Zoning Administrator, and in my staff comments dated June 20th, 24, with the following changes. To item number 4, all piles of fill shall be set back a minimum of 60 feet from Main Street on the south parcel and 30 feet, and set back 30 feet from Main Street from the north parcel. I'm okay with that. You all may want to have to discuss that point, but I'm okay with that.
I think we discussed it plenty, unless you guys, can we just accept it and put it in what we're voting on? Do we need to vote on that separately? It's the difference. Yeah. Okay.
So I'm good
Keep
with,
going.
I'm good with that one.
Keep going.
And so I just wanted to mention that that was a change. Change number 2, any piles of fill, I'm sorry, and this is item number 5 on my staff comments. Any piles of fill that are anticipated to be stockpiled for longer than 14 days, we'll change that. My recommendation is that we change that to 30 days. Shall be stabilized with seed, mulch, hydroseed, or some other stabilization treatment to prevent fugitive dust and sediment. The last item, which I am less comfortable with, is the total height of the fill pile. I have spent many of my earlier years of zoning enforcement chasing piles, and I can tell you anything over 16 feet generally becomes a problem. Given the site and its coastal location, with winds, we know that there are high winds at the site with the airport, and the issues that they deal with the runways. So I think the applicant is proposing 30 feet tonight. It was originally stated in earlier staff meetings that it wouldn't exceed 12 feet, which is why I recommended 12. So you all are going to have to decide how comfortable you are with these piles of fill, given the visibility, given the possibility for fugitive dust, high winds, dry conditions, the folks that live in the area. And so essentially what I'm recommending, over here, hold on, Mr. Knott. So I'm proposing 12 feet. The applicant has proposed 30 feet. My recommendation is that if you want to give the applicant some flexibility and meet in the middle at 21 feet, that's roughly the difference. I'm okay with the maximum height being 21 feet. With regular checking and shooting it with a laser to determine that it is in compliance with the 21 feet. So I'm okay with that, but I'll let you all make that decision. Other than that, I think they've agreed to all the other conditions that I've recommended in my staff comments. So it sounds like really the only one for discussion that you all may have is that total height of the pile. And my final recommendation is 21 feet.
But that include, we're talking about both properties. Or are we only talking about the?
No pile of fill should be taller than 21 feet.
How about while the building is still standing, the two facades of the building are still standing on Main Street?
I wouldn't consider those piles of fill. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're asking.
Well, if I'm understanding correctly, you're going to leave up the two sides of the Stippens Main Street, main.
Can't ask the applicant any questions.
Oh, that,
The hearing's over, unfortunately.
yeah.
I'll try to answer them the best I can.
They're, if I understand it right, they were going to leave those two facades up as a barrier.
Correct.
Those buildings are 35 feet.
Well, that's for the north site.
Yes,
The
that's what
south
I'm
site,
saying.
that is not the case. So I'm more concerned, I'm more concerned with the, if the elevation is of the buildings are at a minimum of 30 feet, a 21 fill pile behind it will be okay. Doesn't alleviate the concern for dust.
No, you are right.
Wall does not do anything for the dust.
And
But
honestly,
anyways, it's the south site where the stockpiles are, where, they have the motorcycle courses out in that giant parking lot. That's the area that there will not be a buffer in front of that. So I think
what happens, Jay, when that area floods and we have 30-foot piles of dirt there? Any idea?
Well, I think that the applicant is going to have to be designing, and so part of my recommendation, let me just find it here, is, where is it talking about the flood? In the event of a hurricane or coastal storm event, an emergency action plan shall be submitted prior to the commencement of any work and be kept on file. So the applicant will have to submit prior to doing anything, bringing in any dirt or knocking down any buildings, they'll have to have the emergency action plan to address such an issue. So whether that is providing a moat and 8 feet of sandbags around the fill piles, or they are somehow directing floodwaters in a way to stay away, I think the applicant has every interest to ensure, considering that they are saving money by using this fill, they're elevating their site, they want to protect that commodity that they need. So I feel like that's been addressed in that condition.
So the only comment that we need to modify is from 12 feet to 21 feet.
In addition to the other two, which is
I'm sorry, and the other two.
60 feet setback from Main Street on the south parcel, 30 feet setback from Main Street on the north parcel, and then fill piles that are stockpiled for longer than changing from 14 days to 30 days need to be stabilized.
So, okay. No, oh, yes, Deborah, I'm sorry.
Wasn't there also something about the fencing? I thought there was a comment about the fencing, like, it wasn't agreed to, that,
Yeah, I didn't really understand what was being said because it moved over into how much taxes they were paying. So I don't know. I know that that's a priority for the town to have
Yep.
appropriate screening, and not only that, but with some decorative screening, and also to make sure that the businesses that are there on Sniffens Lane, that folks driving by understand they are in business and they are continuing to be open during this process. So I would not recommend you change anything in that recommended condition of approval.
Anything else that anybody would like to add?
Yes, I would like to add. We received a lot of information here tonight. Over and over again, different things that had to be done, not to be done. It's a lot for us to comprehend. It's probably been one of the most informative hearings we've had, but the problem is it's a lot to absorb. I would like to honestly table 1 through 6 to give us all an opportunity to couple of days to think about it, go over this, have Jay give us an updated version of what he thinks should be included in the motion so that we do it properly. That was a motion to table, by the way.
I'll second that.
So what we're asking Jay to type up all of his comments. And for us to meet.
I'm going to be away for 2 weeks tomorrow, so, yeah.
We should vote because there's no discussion on a motion to table. Request roll call.
Vote on what? Motion table. Oh.
Roll call. All in favor? That's what I'm doing.
So a vote
You
for
all.
yes is the table and to have more time. A vote for no is to vote this evening.
I vote yes for to table. We need more time.
Deborah?
No.
Linda?
Yes.
Lenny?
Yes.
Harold? No.
It's 3, 2.
It passes 3-2, right? So we have to, come back for a vote on
When is
this.
the next meeting?
I don't know. Second week in August.
Second week in August.
Yeah.
Can we have?
Excuse me, Mr. Knott, hold on. We've got other things that we got to do. I'll let you know in the next
Well,
meeting.
wait, I want to ask the commission if they can have a special meeting to deal with this tabled item, because this
Okay.
is this is a huge problem for us.
Excuse me. The public hearing, this portion is over.
The vote is
So-
over. I can talk now.
No, you can't. We're still
running our meeting.
We're still
Mr.
running our administrative meeting.
I will put together a list of the modified conditions. And so, you know, I'm in the office in the morning tomorrow, and I'm happy to work with the chair and the applicant about when we can have, potentially have a meeting for the applicant. And I can work on the timeline with the applicant. I understand that they were highly motivated to have a vote tonight. So, but we can work on finding an appropriate date that works for not only the applicant, but for all of us as well.
Well, basically, we're going to take 6 votes, correct? For each of the 3 things, they're going to have the same set of response items from you. We have to. Theoretically, we do have to table them individually.
All right, move that we table number 1. You gotta go through it again.
Second.
All in favor? Do we need to?
No.
Roll call?
You already know what the vote is. Aye.
Aye.
Number 2, table number 2, 550 Main Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
It's gonna be, yeah.
Three.
Number 3, 350 Main, 350. Number 3, 550 Main Street.
Second.
No.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Number 4, 550 Main Street.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye, no.
Aye.
Aye.
3-2. Number 5, 550 Main Street.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
3-2.
Aye.
Number 6, 550 Main Street.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
3-2. That's it. 1 through 6. I approve the minutes of the regular meeting, 6/26.
And you'll be hearing from Jay when we're going to have our next meeting.
Okay.
Right.
Sit down and read this information so you have some understanding before we have a meeting.
It's too much to.
I need a second on the minutes.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Zoning enforcement with Jay?
I've got no new items for that.
No, nothing under 4? Motion to adjourn.
Oh, well, I do
No.
have one other,
I will say motion to adjourn. Excuse me.
I beat you. I beat you
No.
to it. You can't change it once it's, you want me to withdraw my
I
motion?
want you to withdraw.
Hang on, Jay has something. I withdraw my motion.
so as you all are aware, the meeting on July 24th, public hearing, has been canceled. So, I did give up this room that evening, but we might be able to reconvene that evening. So I would say everyone pencil in July 24th. I know that, you know, folks may be away. And that's our normal meeting date, but we've canceled it. So that's the first item. The second item is
Can
that.
we, if you give us the documentation,
Do that?
What's that?
and we just need to do the vote,
24th?
you have to be
For the
here.
special meeting, right?
No,
Oh, it's our
So we
regular.
could do
That's
that.
next week.
yeah,
For this one?
Week.
okay. The second item,
Do we convene for this?
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from today.
July
Bring-
24th.
We are going to, the date that we canceled, we're gonna bring back, which is July 24th. It is only, assuming it can happen, it is only gonna be a vote. No.
Well, I gave it up today.
You're going away, though, for 2 weeks, right? You'll be back by then?
Oh, you'll be back, okay.
The
24.
day before, so it looks like I've got homework to do on my vacation now. Thanks.
Sorry.
No. So the second item, and that's fine. The second item, the public workshop that we're going to be having, the second public workshop that we're going to be holding for the updated zoning regulations will be, it's tentatively scheduled for September 11. It's going to be open house format, where we'll have several stations and tables regarding some of the more comprehensive changes to the zoning regulations. It's going to be at the Baldwin Center. I expect that the entire commission will be there, helping us staff tables, listening to what maybe some of the residents may have concerns, what they like, what they don't like. And then once we have that workshop, we will take these 30 to 40 bigger changes of the zoning regulations. After hearing what the residents want, what don't want, we're going to have some work sessions here and hopefully get to some consensus as to whether or not we want to include these changes or not. So I would say July 24th, keep open still. September 11, keep open for our public workshop. Yeah, you know, I don't have my personal calendar here in front of me, so I don't know, but these changes aren't tremendously difficult to put into a document, and so I'll look to see when I'm back. Maybe we can do it sooner. I don't know.
Jay, if you put that into a single document, and we'll vote on it
Can
all in the
can they open it back up tonight? There's really four.
She's,
Can they open it? Here, so just so we're clear, to all the recommendations and everything we had, there are 3 changes. So if I understand the commission wants more time, maybe wants all those changes, and I totally respect that and get that. If you decided that now, understanding there are really 3 changes to all the recommendations we have, maybe you want to rescind your tabling and go back, and that way we don't have to meet on the 24th, but it's up to you. I understand. Okay. Yep. All right, so July 24th, September 11th.
okay.